Hey guys, welcome back to GWiz Academy. In this video, we are going to learn about Python Lambda. What is Lambda and how to use it? All those things we are going to see in this video. In our last video, we have seen what is functions and pretty much we have understood how to create functions and how to use it, right? So all the logics, and we ask Python to do certain things, and by using some commands, everything we write inside function, so that whenever we call a function, it behaves in a certain way based on our logics and conditions that we have set, right? Now, what is Lambda? Lambda is absolutely similar to functions, what we have learned in our last video, but it's a simplified version and it's anonymous. Now, don't get confused. What is this anonymous and what is this simplified version? Let's say there is a big function. Let's say if there is a very big function which has around 10 to 15 lines of code in it, or say conditions, loops, all those things, calculations are going on, and then we have created a function with which is having around 15 to 30 lines of code, right? So in that case, using function or creating a separate function in Python is justified, and you can say it is good to create a function in that situation. But what if, let's say, if you just have to create a function, let's say define some these some these in the sense sum of two numbers or something like that. So sum these, and if you pass an argument, parameters are like a comma b, right? And then let's say we are creating a function to add two numbers. Okay, so this is the function name, and here I'm printing it as an output, print a plus b. That's it. This is a function is doing nothing other than adding the two values that user gives us. Let's say whenever user calls the function, let's say sum these, and the value will be like, let's say 5 comma 10, right? So as soon as someone calls this function, as you can see, let me first clear this. Okay, so let's run this code again. Yeah, it's 15, right? 1 5. So this function, whenever we call this function, it will add these two numbers that we pass to the function. These are the two arguments, these are the two parameters and arguments I have clearly explained in the last video. Now here, as you can see, how many lines of code do we have in this function? We created this, we wrote this keyword, define the name of the function, and inside parenthesis we have added two parameters, colon, and then second line print a plus b. And if you observe carefully, it is just one line of code. Even this, if we can simply remove this print as well, it is not doing anything, it is simply printing the output. So the calculation is happening just by one operator, a plus b. That's it. It's as simple as that, right? So just for one single line of code, we are creating this whole function. Is not efficient. Now this is slightly debatable. Some developers say that this is more efficient in the sense of understanding how the code is working, but some developers do tend to follow lambda principles. Like, let's say if I want to do the same, if I want to perform the same action, same thing here, let me simply comment off, or let me keep it like this. If in case I want to perform the same action using lambda, so what I'll do is I'll create a variable, or let's say I'll simply write lambda space. I don't have to write the name of a function. What I can do here is I will simply pass these arguments. Arguments are nothing but a and b, right? And then colon, and then let's say print a plus b. Let's remove this. Perfect. So lambda. This is a keyword, and there are two arguments. And then what to do with these two arguments? Simply add these two arguments and print it out as an output. This is what this lambda function will do. Now I'll assign this whole sentence, whole lambda function into a variable. I'll assign it to a variable. Let's say adding two numbers, right? This is a variable that I have created, right? Now whenever I call this variable adding two numbers, all I need to do is pass these two arguments, a and b. I need to pass it to these two, this particular variable. How to pass it? Let's say 20 comma 30. That's it. And if you save it and run this program, you will see the result is 50. What is it doing? It is adding 20 plus 30, right? These are the two arguments that we have created in lambda function. This is a lambda syntax, and I have assigned this whole lambda statement to a particular variable, and I'm passing these two arguments. Why two arguments? Because this particular variable accepts two arguments, right? So if you don't know whether it accepts or not, you can clearly see here, right? And as you can see, if you hover on this, you'll be able to see it's a variable. And here, as you can see, it's a variable. Adding two numbers is a variable, and it accepts what? It accepts a and b. A can be any data format, data type, and b can be any data type. Basically here it is numbers. We are doing, we are performing addition, right? So basically we need to pass numbers. So if you pass numbers like, let's say 5 comma 10, so it will perform addition and it will send you the results 15, right? So basically what happened here is, instead of creating the function and function name and calling it, instead of that, what I did is, you see here, simply I just created a variable, and within variable I have anonymously created a different type of function which is called as lambda, right? So this is extremely useful in few cases where, let's say you don't have to create a separate function, and also very basic actions can be easily performed. Basic functionalities like, let's say 1 or 2 lines or 3 lines of code, if you want to convert it into a single line of code, then using this lambda method is very much efficient. But still, there is no compulsion, there is nothing like that you don't have to use, you don't have to create functions or something like that. But generally in recent times, if you see in modern web applications, people tend to use lambda functions a lot. So you should be aware that how is this functioning, right? How is this working? So in the sense, you should be able to read it and edit the code wherever it is needed, right? So what is the syntax? This is an example of a lambda function. But what is the syntax? Syntax is nothing but lambda keyword and then argument. Where is the argument? Arguments are 2. We can pass multiple arguments, like 3, 4, 5, 6, any number of arguments we can pass. And then expression in the sense, whatever arguments we are passing here while we call the lambda function. So whenever we call a lambda function, the arguments are something that we pass when we call a lambda, right? So what to do with it is what we tell in expressions. Here we simply said that add these two arguments or add these two numbers and print it in the output. That is what we have told inside this expression, right? So now adding a value example I have given right away. So this is it. And then double the value. Okay, let's say if I want to double any given number, let's say double it. This is a variable that I need to create, and I need to pass a value. Let's say if I pass 20 as an argument, the output should be 40. If I pass 100, the output should be 200. How to do that? I need to multiply this particular argument with 2, right? So that is the only function that I need to create. That is the only function. So here one method is, I can create a function define space double it argument x colon, and then let's say print x into 2 multiplied by 2. So what does it do now is whenever we run this code, it will double it. So the same action I can perform by using lambda as well. Let me simply comment it off. And now here, if you see, let's say I create a variable, or okay, variable, let it be like that. So let me create a keyword, let me write a keyword lambda and space. What is the syntax? Lambda space argument. So what is the argument? This 20 here is the argument, but here I need to specify in some representative manner. So let's say I'll assume it as a x, because the user has not, we are assuming that user will pass the value of x here. So let's say it is x, and then colon here, let's say print what? X multiplied by 2. This is what I need to print. This is a basic operation that I need to do. Now how to call this particular lambda statement? I'll first, so to call this lambda statement that I have right now created, I need to assign this whole statement to a particular variable. So here I'll create a variable named double it, right? I simply created a variable called double it and assigned this lambda statement. And now if I call this variable, I need to pass a argument called as x, and the value of x is 20. And if I do so, what will happen is, if I save this code and run, it's nothing but 40. Let's run this again. It's 40, right? So the same thing that we create, we did not have to create functions, because see, while we start learning object oriented programming, you will see that we will have a separate file to list out all the functions. Okay, if let's say if we are creating a web application or something like that, then we will have different files to perform different actions. So if this is a file where I'm writing a particular code for execution, I won't be creating a function right away here itself. I'll be creating this function inside a file called as functions.python or functions.php. This is how we create we write object oriented code or something like that, right? So let's suppose that you're working with a team and the team has not given you access to functions file, and so that you cannot go ahead and create a new function. You need to make use of existing functions and write your code, but still you need to perform some action, and you need to make code in such a way that it is scalable as well at the same time. I can do it in this way. I can simply perform this mathematical operations like doubling or adding two values. I can simply do it right away, but it is not scalable, right? So for that, I need to create this kind of lambda functions or lambda statements and assign it to a variable. It is slightly scalable. Okay, don't worry about these things. This lambda statement is very simple, and but then still developers do get confused by by seeing the complex code examples or something like that. So you don't have to worry about it. We will explore in depth in while we start creating projects. So yeah, this is it. And one more important thing is, there is no compulsion that you need to make use of lambda or something, lambda, or you cannot use this method that we have learned in our last video, functions. It's nothing like that. It's a personal choice and a preferred one. Let's say if there is a restriction to create function, then we go ahead and create lambda. And some developers do prefer the traditional method of creating functions. Some developers tend to use this modern lambda, writing lambda statements, right? So but now you have learned both, how to create functions, how to create lambda. So right now I'm sure that you will take your personal, you will select your personal choice and you will stick to it. But at the same time, you will understand, you have the understanding of how the other element works. If in case if you choose to work with Lambda, you know how to create and work with functions as well. And if you choose to work with functions, then you understand that how to create Lambda statements and how to assign variable and call all those things, right? So both methods we have clearly explored, right? So thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next video with one more concept in Python programming. Thank you. Have a great day.